I'm pleased to introduce Andrew Meggs, who is our technical director, co-founder, and lead programmer.
Hi.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Your first job says you wrote software renders in PowerPC assembly for Mac OS version of Quake 2 and for Half-Life. Thank you from every Mac user ever.
Half-Life never actually shipped. That was like one of my first big disappointments in the game industry. It was the first time someone was paying me money instead of, me working on shareware out of my dorm room. And I made a great version of Mac Half-Life. We were playing, beta, and things happened, as they often do in the game industry.
Things happened?
And it ended up not shipping, and there was even like a Foxtrot comic in the real world newspaper about how, we cannot play Half-Life on the Mac. And
that's all your fault. No,
yes.
Not really all your fault.
And that was a good learning experience about what the game industry is really all about.
Yeah, but for a very first job, that's a lot of responsibility.
Well,
yeah. Well, it was a small studio as well, correct?
It was out of a strip mall in Covina, California.
Okay.
And it was actually kind of a really cool job because one of my first, when I realized, hey, these games are made by people and I could be one of these people, was when I was playing Bart's Tale on the Apple IIgs, and I found out there was this Easter egg. You typed in someone's name at the startup screen, and it would put his personal splash screen up there. It's like, that's a real person. I could be a dork just like that. And that company was owned by Berger Heinemann, which was really cool when, they called me and said, let me put you on with the CEO. I was like, wait, you? That's so cool!
Awesome. So you've had experiences in small studios, larger studios. Now you're in a smaller studio again. How do you feel about that?
I'm happier here. Honestly,
A bit smaller?
I like the agility. I like not, having to worry about, all right, we want to do this, and so we're going to coordinate things with, 6 layers of management or whatever.
Okay.
We can just decide to do something and make it happen, that day or that week, and I love that.
You've talked about before, we've just talked about having a first job, and there's a lot of people here that are experienced, and there's some people that are learning for the first time as well. How do you feel about that level of flexibility for new people and your mentoring?
It's a hard balance, in my heart, I love being a teacher. I really do. I love just, helping someone learn. My father was a college professor. I got a little bit of that from him, and there are times when, I kind of want to go into Professor Meggs and trying to balance that against, oh my God, write all the code. It's a hard balancing act, but, I wish I could have 2 full days in the office, one to be just Professor Meggs and the other day to, just be the guy who writes the engine.
Yes. For Troika, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, you were lead programmer on that. How did that success of the project compare to something like Skyrim or something that you've worked on, more recently?
That's a weird kind of thing because market-wise, that was the single biggest flop of anything I've worked on, including certain Mac ports. I mean, there were reasons why that didn't sell the way we would have hoped, but at the same time, it's like, that's the game that people still talk about.
We just had a release recently, didn't it? Another update of some sort? I thought it was 9.
It's been completely taken over by the community, and one of the great things we did was we put all the just level scripts and everything raw on the disk so people could see them and edit them, and that was, I'll be honest, that was not brilliance on our part. That was, we just never got the time to integrate them and encrypt them because that was always not a priority. And because we didn't get that done, the community's been able to take the game and grow it into something that's amazing. Seriously, you guys are great.
You worked on curtains, capes, flowing skirts, collisions for the wearer's body. Can you see, possibly expound on how these things will be reflected in our characters? So
you always, we did some really cool things in that game. it was a game about having a very small number of characters that you were, really intimate and close with, and we're doing a somewhat different game here where, it's can we put thousands of characters all running around? So a lot of that detail isn't necessarily something we want, or, especially from a performance point of view, but I'm not going to rule it out. Probably my favorite game character I've ever worked on was the gangrel male in Vampire Bloodlines, where you just, we did all these things with flouncy skirts and things, but the physics on his dreadlocks just looked so cool when he would go running around and, take a swing at someone. So I love that. I'd love to do more. We might find time to get it in, things like that in for your character. We're probably not going to do it for a battlefield full of characters.
Makes sense. Well, talking about physics systems and integrating them into the character animation, you've been known for doing tentacles, body parts, trailing ponytails. What other kinds of things have you worked on regarding that? And I understand you've written some papers.
I did write a paper on cloth simulation. That was like GDC 2005, if you want to go way, way back in time. It's cool to still see some of that stuff being used. I'm not going to rule it out.
What is that like presenting at GDC? Basically talking about people's underparts.
It's intimidating, but they're your fellow game developers. It's really easy to do something when basically the audience is people like you. It's just, well, what kind of talk would I find interesting here? That guy was boring. Don't be like him. And it's the same thing we're doing with this game. This game is, a lot of people in this office are gamers, and a lot of the design of this game came out of conversations about what we did and did not like here. And so, again, one of the great things with a small studio is that you can make the game for yourself. And hopefully that niche is large enough that you also break even, or even, make some money on it.
Programmers have a major impact on success of a project, obviously, and the design decisions that you make affect everything. So how do you achieve your vision and yet create something fun together as a group? Your individual vision and how you expect it to be versus working together with a group who also has input.
Lots of browbeating, intimidation,
arm twisting,
threats. You can always just make something not work if you don't like it.
Is that how it is?
Yeah, it's totally like that.
Okay. Now this question, which relates directly, design leadership is at the center of success or failure, writes design consultant Phil O'Connor, who did Far Cry 3. Do you agree, and how do you achieve that, if so?
Well, I will agree with that. And honestly, Mark is a hell of a designer. It was something that I didn't realize when I started this studio. I thought, okay, yeah, Mark does high concept stuff, because by the time I had started at Mythic, Mark was pretty much out of the loop on just the ground floor day to day, should this guy be 5% faster or slower types of design stuff. And then we did March on Oz, and I was like, holy shit, this man knows his spreadsheets. And I didn't realize what I was getting into when I started this company with him. But, when he's not flying off to, EA general manager meetings, not worrying about the business plan for a 300-person studio, the guy knows game balance in a way that, honestly, Warhammer suffered for not having him involved the way he was on Dark Age of Camelot.
Okay. I understand you've designed and implemented the lighting architecture and for many games, and you seem to specialize in making things really efficient. How will the lighting and your expertise translate into Camelot Unchained?
So there's two parts of that, and they really actually come into the design of the world. The first thing is that this game, I hate this word because it's overused, but it's more sandboxy than something like Warhammer or even Skyrim. Players can themselves have a bigger effect on just changing and shaping the world. And so by pushing a lot more things to be dynamic, be that a really immersive day-night cycle with celestial mechanics, where it feels like a world that you live in, or things like just the way we're doing all of our lighting to, nothing pre-baked, everything just absolutely live and completely reactive to what people are doing in the world. Even if we have to make some trade-offs about looking as perfect as possible, it's as dynamic as possible. And I think that's a hugely important thing that we're doing technologically here.
Trying to make someone else's idea, or I guess you'd say formula of fun, is really unsuccessful. Can you explain to non-programmers like me how creativity and individuality shows itself in programming?
Yeah, it's like if you've been around as a programmer, like you can look at a piece of code and like people have their style, and that was one of the great things that because I spent like my first couple of years doing Mac ports and things, like I knew. I just came to see like, all right, this is how Valve writes their code. This is how id Software writes their code. And to this day, like I could probably pull up a dump of like the latest id tech and tell you the parts that John Carmack wrote himself. And I learned a lot from just every individual programmer's style. I mean, it's under the hood, but there is really just sort of a rhythm and poetry and an aesthetic balance to the way people do it. And sometimes I wish I could show the people out there just this is so beautiful the way it works. But ultimately it all comes down to, is it fun?
How do you think other people would describe how your code looks? Like, would they say, when I think of Andrew's code, whatever adjectives that would be? How would you classify those different styles you're saying?
Hopefully, if they're being generous, short. The more you can, when you end up piling a lot of things on, or solving a problem by building another structure on top of the structure you have, that's kind of when you lack that elegance, and when you end up with something that's not as reusable. But when you can just come up with one really clean, small, clean, elegant thing to cover all the cases, that's sort of what I aspire to.
Something you were talking about at lunch the other day I thought was worth sharing with the community, which was talking about how everybody's working together to almost add to this artistic, like if you've got a painting, everybody's adding a color, and instead of just copying the painting, as you're saying, you're actually just continuing the chain from that person's work, which is very collaborative and sort of beautiful, kind of artistic thing.
It's a hard path to walk between art. We're pulling this together into a whole, and I do a lot of that as the lead engineer. But at the same time, you don't want to, we do have some junior people here. You don't want to, push down on their enthusiasm to learn and grow and make something that they're personally excited about. So it almost comes back into the mentoring thing of a good art teacher isn't someone who turns out an entire class of students who all make the exact same painting.
Makes sense. Speaking about paintings, if you're speaking to programmers or you're speaking to artists and you're trying to convey things about the game, you probably have to approach that differently. And how would you describe how you try to convey things if you're talking to the art team or if you're talking to the programming team?
I kind of speak artist, hopefully. Maybe Scott agrees. My father, I said he was a college professor. He was specifically an art teacher. My mother was an illustrator. My sister teaches painting at Pratt. I'm the black sheep in the family because I went into something respectable like programming. So I grew up with it. I understand how to hopefully bridge that gap, and what I can't explain by talking, I get up and dance all around the room talking about the animation system.
Interpretive.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's good we have the open office, because otherwise I'd trip over the other people.
You wear a kilt so you can properly express what you're trying to say to the artists.
Yes.
So what things are you working on now that are exciting that you can share?
So first of all, we've done a lot of infrastructure over the last year. Getting core systems in place, getting just combat, basic combat mechanics, things like that. And we intentionally put a lot of the shiny type stuff on hold while we worked on that because, gameplay first. And now I'm finally getting, back into the chance to just, take the pretties and make them pretty. And, that's in my heart. I'm a graphics guy. So I really enjoy doing that. I have to balance tweaking the shaders versus actually running the studio.
Yes.
But I have kind of saved that part for myself because I love it.
Thank you to Andrew, and I absolutely know we're going to hear more from you during the stream.
Not at all. I'm a quiet guy.
We know.
Yeah, probably head down. Yeah.
There'll be some dancing behind the screen. Pretty sure.
All right. Thanks a lot.